Hello and welcome everyone to lesson 11 in this chess beginner to winner series, in which we take you from absolute chess beginner to winning your first chess tournament games and beyond. And today we will talk about discovered attacks. And so in order to discuss discovered attacks, first I'm going to show you a game, a very famous game between Richard Reddy and Savielly Tartakower. So hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And it took place in 1910. So two of the top players in the world at that time. And so the game begins here. Before I start the game, I'll show you this game review by the computer that shows White played with 99.7% accuracy versus 70.5% by his opponent. And he also had, White had one brilliant move, three great moves, no blunders, mistakes, or anything. All right, let's take a look at this game. So, if we look at the analysis, the game began here with e4. A good solid first move. And now c6 is played, the Caro-Kann defense, which this move is played in order to be able to push your d-pawn, and it'll be backed up by this c-pawn, and the d-pawn will be able to attack White's e-pawn here. So if your opponent lets you put both pawns in the center, that's usually a good idea because now these pawns control a lot here. And d5 is played, counterattacking this e-pawn. The e-pawn can either capture, move forward, or you could protect it with another piece, which is what Reddy does here. He moves his knight up, developing a piece, attacking the center, and helping protect this pawn. So capture and recapture. And now the knight jumps out here, attacking. So what does White do? He, instead of attacking and capturing and messing up the pawns over here on the king side, he just defends the knight with the queen. So now we have e5 being played, which is an inaccuracy here. It looks like just capturing would have been better. White's queen would be strong out here in the center. Anyway, with this move, maybe Black is trying to capitalize on, I don't know, just adding pressure to this d-pawn. If we have a capture here, well, the queen could capture White's queen. There'd be exchanges in the middle. All right, before we get too far into these crazy variations, we see here that White plays the best move. So he captures the pawn here, which attacks the knight. And then we also have a discovered attack on the queen. So a discovered attack is basically when you move one piece out of the way and the piece behind it has a line of attack on another piece. So if we go back here, right now the queen is lined up on Black's queen, but once the pawn moves, there's a discovered attack on the queen. Now right now the queen is fine, it is protected by Black's king. So the game continues with this move, queen to a5, checking, but now we have a block here. Bishop to d2, blocking the check and attacking this queen. So now the queen moves over here with the best move, capturing the pawn and keeping material even. So now we have a great move again here, castling on the queen side, setting up a devastating attack which Black does not notice. because after capture here, this is a blunder, which leads to a checkmate in 3. So take a look at this and see if you can even figure out how the game will end with a checkmate in 3. All right, well, it looks like before we give you the answer, we'll see what should have been played. It looks like just developing here, bishop to e7 would have been better. But with this capture of the knight, it's a blunder that leads to a forced checkmate in 3. And so how does this continue? Well, first, queen to d8, a brilliant move is played here. This queen move checks the black king, and when you're in check, you either have to block, run, or capture the attacker. So the black king cannot block because they're side by side, and he can't run anywhere because the queen is just covering everything around this king. So he's forced to capture here. And this leads to a discovered attack. Now, this discovered attack, it begins with bishop to g5. So if we go back here and look, the rook is lined up here on the king. So the bishop moves out of the way, unleashing a discovered attack by this rook. So the rook is now checking the king. But this is a double discovered check as well, as the rook checks and the bishop is checking here. And whenever two pieces are checking your king at the same time, you don't even have the option to block, because you can't block both pieces, both of these pieces here at the same time. And you can't capture because there's no way to capture both pieces at once. So your only option is to run. But where does the king run to? So if the king tries to run to the side here, well, then we have a mate by the bishop with bishop to d8 mate here. And we can go back, and if the king instead, after this double discovered check, tries to run over here, well, then the rook will jump up here and deliver mate as well. All right, so a very interesting game. And in the game, let's see how it actually ended. After this move, this was played. So this is how the game ended. 11 moves, and a checkmate was delivered by Richard Reddy, one of the top players back around 1910 when this game was played. All right, so now we can discuss further some of these discovered attacks. So I'm going to clear the board off, and we'll just go through a couple different options or ways to use the discovered attack. All right. Whenever there's a discovered attack, a lot of times it may involve rooks. So once the pawns are cleared out of the way in the center of the board, the rooks can become dangerous. And we saw how if you had this bishop in front of the rook and the king lined up here, how you were able to move the bishop and deliver a double discovered attack here, discovered check by both pieces. But let's say there was plenty of room for the king to escape after this discovered check. So instead, what if the opponent had, I don't know, a rook here and another rook over here? Well, if the king was not lined up with this rook here, then once the bishop captured, or we'll make it even. Let's say it's an even trade, a knight for the bishop. So, of course, if this rook was over here somewhere and the bishop just tried to capture, the rook would capture and it would be an even trade. But because we have a rook lined up on the king, well, now instead of the double discovered check, a better move would be just to go ahead and capture this knight, because now the king is in check and he would have to move out of that check, and it would give you time to retreat your bishop, or even move it here to attack. But it gets the bishop out of the way so the rook cannot capture it. So always watch out anytime you have a rook, or even a queen, same thing, just lined up on the king, even though there's pieces in between the possible attacker like this queen and the enemy king. Once that bishop moves, it unleashes a discovered attack on the king, and that can cause a lot of problems. So keep that in mind. Here, the bishop could move here, delivering a check and attacking the rook at the same time. So very dangerous stuff here. And it doesn't have to be a rook or a queen that's attacking. You could have something different, like, let's see here. We'll get rid of the queen and put a knight on board here. Well, now you could go and move your knight with check and then unleash a discovered attack on the rook here. So the king would probably come down here and try and attack the knight, and you can pick off the rook and exchange your knight for a rook here. So another example. And something else that can be very dangerous, let's say you have something like this, where the bishop is could be just lined up on the king, but there's a pawn in between. And especially if the king had been castled over here, and the rook was not here to defend, well, now you could have something very dangerous like this where, where this pawn moves forward and now the king is being checked. And so the king cannot move over here to stop this pawn, because the pawn cuts off this f8 square. The bishop is checking and cutting off f7. The king's forced into the corner, and then you can move your pawn forward here and promote it to a queen or even a rook and deliver checkmate here. So, once again, very dangerous, these discovered attacks. And I would encourage you, as always, to just go ahead and do some chess puzzles, chess problems with many different tactics, and I'm sure you'll see some discovered attacks and also some discovered checks, discovered double checks. But just working on puzzles and problems, even if you just do 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, that can add up and greatly improve your chess, and you'll become better at tactics, better able to defend against tactics, and also use them to attack your opponent and hopefully win more chess games. All right. I don't know, that about covers the basics of discovered attacks. There are so many. I could just go on, and the video could last for hours. But let me make sure there's nothing else I'm forgetting here. We can clear the board off. Let's see. We saw how the bishop and The knight can move out of the way. Basically, when it comes to discovered attacks, just always be careful when you're king, when the enemy is lining up pieces on your king, but it doesn't even have to be the king. You could have, I don't know, just a random rook over here, and as we saw earlier, if you have a bishop lined up on a piece like this, any long range piece, this could be a queen as well, and let's say there's a rook here, and maybe the king is even over here protecting the rook even. Well, what if you had something like this? Excuse me. A move like this. So now we have a check by the king, or excuse me, by the rook on the king, but it unleashes a discovered attack on the rook here. So, what does the king do? If he tries to move here even and protect this, well, now both pieces are piling up, and you can move over and capture here and check the king again. So just another of many examples how you can use discovered attacks. And they can be very dangerous, and especially when pawns are involved as well, because the pawns are less valuable than all the other pieces. So you could even have something like, I don't know, 2 pawns here, and let's say the enemy king is down here, and I don't know, the queen is here. Well, now you can have a pawn move like this, where the pawn moves attacking the queen, but there's a discovered check here. So discovered checks are very dangerous when a piece is lined up on the king and this pawn moves out of the way. And of course, the king can move and run away, but maybe a better move, because this queen is going to be lost, captured by the pawn. So maybe a better move is to go here, and of course the queen is a goner, but the king can at least get a bishop out of it, out of the trade. So just one more example. So discovered attacks. To set one up, you just take a long range piece. It can be a bishop, a rook, the queen, and you just line it up on your opponent's piece. It could be the king, the queen, usually something more valuable, or an unprotected piece. And you just line that long range piece up like we just saw here with the bishop. And even if there are pieces in between, eventually those pieces could be traded off or moved out of the way, like this pawn move. So another example could be if the king is here and maybe the queen is over here somewhere, and now the same thing. Excuse me. So the same thing, you move the pawn out of the way, delivering this discovered attack, checking the king, and now the queen is under attack. So, the king would have to move, and then you pick off the queen over here. And so, interesting examples. And I would encourage you to set some of these up on the board yourself, maybe play them against the computer, try and practice different little discovered attacks. And definitely keep an eye out for discovered attacks, discovered checks, all of that in practicing with chess problems and chess puzzles. All right, everybody. I'll end the video there today. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions, and also requests if there's some specific things you want to see in the future. If there's nothing else, have a great day, and I will see you the next time. Thank you, everyone.